Rosanna Bablock. Hi, Bintu Agde. Hi. Hi, happy midweek, happy hump day, happy Wednesday, everybody. Mrs. Renee Ingram. Hello, beautiful, back to you. Thank you. How kind of you. Carol Flovey. I hope that's right. Cindy Gale. Hi. Gibba444. Hi. Eden. Bianca Maria. Hi. Kara Littlefield. Hi, I hope you're well. She said, hi, I hope you're well too. Ingrid Harris. Hi from Atlanta. Hi there in Atlanta. I hope everybody in Atlanta is doing well. Kurt Booth, hi from Dallas. Mal 1111129. Lisa Marie 901 says you look gorgeous. Oh, thank you. I was looking at this earlier and I'm like, oh, I look tired. So thank you for saying that. I'm super excited to be here today. Actually, every time I get on one of these and we talk about what we've been thinking, I'm excited. But I'm really super duper yippee excited to be talking to this guy. You see him? Look at that. Man enough, Justin Baldoni. Undefining my masculinity. These are all my little tags in here because I love this idea of undefining my masculinity. I just love having this conversation. I did a film a couple years ago called The Mask You Live In. It was about the mask that men find themselves trapped in and really we're all trapped in some kind of mask. That's the truth. We're all trying to get to our authentic selves, or anybody who's awake is, I would say. And so I really loved this book for a whole bunch of reasons. I have 4 brothers. I have 2 sons. I was in a relationship with a man for 34 years. I had a dad. I grew up in a very male-dominated environment. I went into a very male-dominated profession. So I've been trying to understand men for a really long time. And this book is really helpful in that because men are trying to understand themselves too. And they're trying to unravel everything that it means to be a man. And I think that's what's so exciting about men today. I see that in my own sons. I see that in my son-in-law. I see that in so many of the young men that I meet today who are so open to talk about their feelings, who are well-versed in emotional intelligence. Look at that. I see that in my brothers. And so I love having this conversation with this man who's really stepping in to this space to talk to men, to women, to people of all genders, people who don't define themselves in either way. So I love that. And he's talking from his point of view. He's very honest about that. And the stories he tells in here they're just great. So I'm so happy that we're going to be talking to, there he is already, Justin. Wow, he's 1 minute in and boom, there he is. So he's on a path to promote this book. So he's on time. Hi, Justin.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm talking to Maria Shriver. What's happening? Somebody
Justin,
pitch
I'm
me.
watching all of your IG lives. I've been secretly watching you. And you're doing such a great job. I really have been so enamored with all of the conversations you've been having, the work you've been doing. So I'm woo, woo. Somebody said, woo, woo, you two are talking. And I've been really look at what I've done to your book.
I can't, that's crazy. You're Maria Shriver. What are you doing reading my book?
I'm reading your book because I want to understand what's happening with men.
Me too, Maria.
I love this, Justin. First of all, congratulations, because I know how hard it is to write a book. And I know how scary it is when the book is done to just put it out there, because you're putting yourself out there in a really raw and naked way.
I think you described it perfectly. Especially with this topic, because it's, as you know, I'm talking about things that men don't normally talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to bring up a lot. There's a lot of pushback, and it's uncomfortable, but that's also where the real work is. And so I am having to simultaneously wrestle with my journey to being enough, with wanting to be accepted by my own gender, knowing that it's my own gender that's going to push back on me the hardest. And it's definitely been a lot, but I'm finally feeling at peace, and this is also really helpful. I get to talk to you. So
Yeah, well, I'm so proud of you. A couple of years ago, I executive produced a film called The Mask You Live In,
I
which
know
is
it well.
about men kind of this similar to this subject, but obviously not an individual story. And in the Shriver reports that I had done, we looked at men and what men expected of women and men's roles and how trapped they were about what society had led them to believe was a man. And I think that in the beginning of the book, really, I liked so much in the preface that you talked about, you doubted whether you were the right person to write it. Was this the right time? Was this a good idea? And you said at the end that you needed this book so badly yourself. And I want to start with that from that place. Why did you need this book so badly?
Because the things that I talk about in the book were things that are taboo, that nobody talked to me about. And had somebody I don't want to say been brave enough, but been brave enough in my own life to talk to me about so many of the things that are just off limits for men, it could have prevented so much suffering over the course of my life. Oh my gosh, if it's okay, I actually would love, can I actually read this section that actually answers your exact question? Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Why now? Why this book? Well, because I need this book.
Yep.
Badly. I needed this book as the 10-year-old boy who was shown porn for the first time, long before his body or his mind was ready for it, likely paving new neural pathways, linking images of naked women to happiness and false feelings of self-worth, images that he would later use to attempt to fill voids in his life. Voids that, when he was not aroused and in the moment of using porn, would be replaced by shame. I needed this book as the 18-year-old freshman in college who felt the need to prove his masculinity by hooking up with as many girls as he could without any regard for their feelings or attachments in the process. And as the 22-year-old who didn't know how to say he wasn't emotionally ready to have sex for the first time. And as the 25-year-old man who was heartbroken and so financially broke that even if he could have afforded to eat for that month after he learned he was cheated on, he wouldn't have. And I needed it at 29 years old, for the 29-year-old who had finally found the love of his life, staged one of the most elaborate proposals of all time, and then also found himself having cold feet for no other reason than what society was telling him would happen to him once he got married. And it goes on and on and on.
And I needed it. I'm right there with you. I needed it as a 31-year-old who was about to have a daughter and had no idea what to do or how to raise her, because he realized that for most of his life, despite believing in equality, he had not treated women with the respect he knows they deserved, both socially and romantically. And then he goes on. So I'm right. I marked all that down.
Oh.
And so I think it's a really brave thing to have this conversation, and so needed as a mother of two young men in their 20s. Do you find men more open to this conversation, more emotionally available for it than they were 5 or 10 years ago? Because I'm way older than you, but I'll tell you, when I was in my 20s, there were no men talking like this.
Yeah, but I have to say, that's thanks to you women.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think if anything, this is a testament to you guys with your picks, just slowly picking away at this wall. And it might have not looked like progress, but I believe there's been tremendous progress. And this conversation is happening on the shoulders of you, of all of you who have been trying to have this conversation forever. And so, yeah, I think that men are more open. I think, unfortunately, the biggest barrier right now is politics. And that's why I refuse to say toxic masculinity.
Mhm.
because I think that what's happened is we've conflated a very human issue with a political issue, and we've weaponized words, and so therefore there's a huge segment of the population who are good people, who are good men, who don't know how to look past their ideologies and take in a message. And that's why I think what we need to be doing is having invitational conversations, right? That's why I
Yeah,
say this book is not a motivational book, it's an invitational book.
I love
um,
that.
because
I love that.
that's the answer right there. And so the answer is yes, there's a whole lot of men who are even in the last 5 years been far more willing to have the conversation, but that's because of Tarana Burke and the Me Too movement, right?
Mhm.
That's because of these massive, massive conversations that have put men in a position where we don't even have the basic vocabulary to engage in these conversations, and we're
Yeah,
having to do a lot of work and research to even understand what the hell's going on.
yeah.
So I think that the answer is yes. It's thanks to women, and it's also not enough. There's not enough men willing to have it, and it's because of the language barriers that I believe we have.
Yeah, I think in that you start out by saying, and I want to say several people saying, what is the book? It's Man Enough, Undefining My Masculinity. I tried to say it in the beginning by Justin. And he talks about in the beginning that he wrote this book. He thought he was going to redefine masculinity. And then he came to the place and the space that you wanted to undefine it, right? And that I loved that you also said this is not a motivational book where you lay out the path forward. It's an invitation to look at every aspect of manhood and about being enough and about the masks that men wear and
Mm-hmm.
about what you've been taught about sexuality, about porn, about women, about what it means to be a man. And you have an incredible story in there about meeting your wife, your now wife, Emily, and which I thought was so brave. And you were saying, you know, she just wasn't sexually into you. And that was such a you didn't even want to write that down. And that how many men approach relationships really just thinking all women are the same.
Yeah, it's so funny. Having two different feelings happen. You're talking to me right now about words that I wrote. And so I continue to
Yeah,
have this dialogue of like, how did I get here? Oh my God, how am I talking to Maria Shriver? And then you're also repeating things that I wrote. And I'm like, how did I put that in the book? Why did I put that in the book? So I'm having all of these things happen at once. And that's also why this is so important. And
yeah,
I'm willing to live on the razor's edge. Uh, and yes, so look, I think that this is a really large conversation, even down to like the attractive thing.
yeah.
Over the course of my dating life in my 20s, I put on and tried on every mask that you could imagine. I read books. I remember reading The Game, right?
Mhm.
And I did everything because at the end of the day, I was taught that as a man, my admittance to the man club, my VIP card to that man club, is highly dependent on the quality of the woman that I pull, the woman that I get. Thinking of women as a possession, right?
Yeah,
We're
the
told
woman
from a
I
young boy,
pull,
can
the
I
woman I
get
pull.
can I get that girl? Like we're
Yeah,
taught that early on, and we don't even realize that we're brainwashing ourselves as young boys into seeing women as objects, right? And if you see something as an object, you don't have compassion for objects. Of course, there's a correlation between that and rape culture and 1 in 4 women, right? So
yeah.
all that to say, I had tried on all these different masks. I had been the distant guy, the chill guy, the cool guy. I've been the vulnerable. I've tried everything, and at the end of the day, nothing was working because I was never happy.
Uh-huh.
And then you play the game where you don't call her back. You do all that stuff, and sure that might make room for attraction, but that attraction ends up fading. There's no real foundation. You're not building a relationship on that. That's not fertile ground for a marriage. And so I met my wife, and I had a feeling that she was the one.
Yeah,
And I said, I'm going to do this different. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be myself. And I'm going to talk about the things that are important to me. I'm going to talk about my faith, and I'm going to talk about my beliefs, and I'm going to talk about my insecurities. And because I know that the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with can hold that. Or because at some point, it's going to have to come out. And I would much rather it come out now than come out down the line. Because I believe we really got to get to know each other. That's why I joke in the book that if only the ideal first date could be a therapy session, we'd have far less divorces. Um, But as it came to my wife and I, everyone has their own baggage and
Yeah.
their own trauma. And, actually, Emily and I are going to be having a frank conversation next for one of our book tour events. But as Bell Hooks writes in A Will to Change, women also have to battle their own internal misogyny because we've all been raised in a patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
So what we've found, and Glennon Doyle brilliantly writes about this in Untamed, is I could be vulnerable. And this is also, I'm sharing this, I didn't put this in the book. This is really Emily's story to eventually share, in when she writes a book or if she chooses to one day. And I just really focus on the man part of my journey. But
Yeah.
there's many women who want men to be vulnerable. But when a man is vulnerable, have been socialized to believe that that is weakness.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah.
so women don't even realize that they've also been socialized in the same way as us men. And then oftentimes us men, when we're vulnerable, can be shamed or it can create polarity issues or dynamic issues, which then have to be overcome. And gratefully, my wife was somebody who was able to stick in and do the work. I was able to stick in and do that hard work of heart work. And
Yeah.
we were able to make it past that because, her father was an alcoholic who passed away far too young. And she had her own issues. And we figured that out together. So at the end of the day, marriage is two people taking all their shit and all their trauma from their entire life, putting it on the front lawn together, and using that shit as soil to build the foundation. And
Yeah.
that's
You
what I've learned in
describe
my
that.
relationship with my wife.
You describe that visually in the book, everybody taking their shit out, and that you say you put it in your vows. You said love the shit out of
We
each
love
other.
the shit out of you.
Love
Exactly.
the shit out of each other. But you also say towards the end of the book, Justin, that you go through, as I said, all of these different aspects about how you're raised, what you've confronted. But you said ultimately you want this book you want people to know that they're enough. Right? Ultimately, if they take one thing and one thing only away from this book and all the work that's gone into this, and a lot of heart work has gone into this, is that they're enough. Is that something you think we ever get to?
No.
No.
But look,
Then why do you want us to feel like that by the end of the book?
So one of the Arabic words for human is insan, which is translated to insane, which means they who forget. So human beings are they who forget.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that really interesting, right? Because it's not about just recognizing that we are enough and just getting there and we're there and congratulations, we can sit back in our chair and we can put our hands up and we can be like, hey, I'm enough, I got here. It's about the journey of remembering, because the way the world works and is designed, everything is put in this place to help us forget. We're distracted on a daily basis from our own worthiness, from our nobleness, from our enoughness, right? And the internet, social media, age, right? All of these things are designed to challenge us and test us, I think, in really unique ways. And the journey is in the act of remembering. So yes, of course, I want people to remember that they're enough and to know that they're enough. But for me, that's a daily practice. It's like breathing. Like we have to sometimes remember to breathe, even though we do it on our own. It's like any other practice that we have. We have to remember that we are enough. And it's in the act of remembering that the healing can begin. We don't just get there. It's a practice.
You said in the beginning that many men have gotten to this more open or more emotionally intelligent place because women have been picking away, right? Women have been asking men to show up differently. Mothers have been raising different sons, right?
Yeah.
I know certainly the language that I'm using with my boys is very different than the language my mother raised my four brothers with, right?
Oh, and I can imagine.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about feelings. We talk about emotional intelligence. We talk about love language. I talk about trauma. I talk about to the point where they're like, oh, kind of that a little bit. But what's your advice to women who may be listening here, or people who come up against a man who's like, I'm not having it. I don't want to talk like this. I don't want to do this hard work. I know what it means to be a man. I know you don't subscribe to the toxic masculinity word, but what if you're up against a man through culture, because men define masculinity in different cultures in different ways, right? Who just is like not having this conversation.
That's a really that's a really good question. Um, I don't believe that anybody can be forced into a prescribed way of thinking. I think that if you look at all of the issues plaguing our planet and our world right now and how divided we are as a country on everything,
Mm-hmm.
race, sexism, anything,
Yeah.
um, I think that we have a massive gap. Um, and that gap is empathy and
Yeah.
compassion and
Mm-hmm.
the willingness to sit in the hard stuff and listen. So I would never say, well, then that man's not for you, throw him out. Because we have to remember that there are years and years and years of socialization that have led to that particular set of beliefs. And also that for many of us men, these belief systems are our identity.
Yeah.
Like the risks and the stakes for us boys and men are so high that we oftentimes are willing to cut ourselves off from our own feelings in service of the man club. We are willing to sacrifice our morals and our values to stay silent when we see things that we morally object to. Just that behavior shows us the stakes here. The stakes are high. We
Yeah.
desperately want to fit in. We desperately want to be enough, even if we're not acknowledging it. So a lot of these ideologies and these beliefs are embedded in us and enmeshed in our wounds as children. So nobody's going to just like get over it. However, I believe that compassion and empathy can be chipped away, just like you guys have been chipping away at this conversation, which has allowed me to even have the chance to write this book. And
Right.
we have to be inviting men into the conversation. And we do that by trying to draw similarities between the two of us. Maybe it's not handing this man this book and saying, hey, can you read it? Maybe it's not hitting him over the head with feminism. But I would argue that if a man won't identify with feminism, then you could maybe come up with one of the basic definitions of feminism. And you could ask, do you believe in the radical idea that women are people? And if a man says no to that, then I would say, yeah, it's probably a good idea to just don't waste your time. But if he says yes to that, which as we know is an idea of what feminism actually is, the radical notion that women are human beings, well, I think we can build off that. Well, great. Well, we have something in common because I think that too. So that means we both think that there should be equality and we should have equal rights. And then we can start to challenge some of these ideas. And that's what this book really does is I ask why. Like, what is the thing in all of us men that makes us think that a woman should do the dishes and not me or do the laundry? Why is that? Well, where does that come from? And what we'll learn slowly but surely is that these ideas aren't ours. They were
Mm-hmm.
implanted in our brains via socialization, via movies and television shows, all of these things.
So how are you raising, and you talk about how you were raised, you talk about your dad here and everything, but how are you raising your son differently than your dad raised you?
My dad and I just talked about this, and it was really cool. Um, I'm raising my son to know that the heart is the strongest muscle in his body. I'm raising my son to know that his dad is not a superhero. His dad is a flawed, messy human being who learns every day and wakes up every day and tries to be a little better than he was yesterday, but is also going to fail and fall down. I'm raising my son to see my flaws and to understand that my flaws make me human. And these were things that my dad never did, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to. And they're actually things that on my journey, I've been teaching my dad. And it's really sweet to see my dad being willing at 72 years old to grow with me and go on that journey, which is making us closer. And as I'm teaching my son is now teaching my dad. I talk about that intergenerational healing in the book of how I
Yeah.
taught my son how to say, the heart is the strongest muscle. And we sing this song called Show Me Your Heart. And then he taught it to
Yeah.
my dad, and my dad was singing it. And there was a moment where I was just in tears because I was looking at this, and there's 3 generations of Baldoni men. And the 4th isn't here, my grandfather who immigrated from Italy. God, if we could have just learned early on to show each other our flaws, to embrace our vulnerabilities, to be able to talk to each other, to learn from each other's mistakes versus to suck it up and be impervious. I would have had so much less trauma in my life and made so many less mistakes. Eventually I got here and I'm grateful for it, but there could have been less pain in the process. And that's how I'm raising my son a little bit differently than my dad. I don't want to ever fall from grace like my dad did. I don't want to have that moment where my son realizes I'm human.
Yeah.
I want to fall into grace, which is I
Yeah.
want my son to see that I'm human from the beginning and know that it's his humanness that is the superpower.
Yeah, I watch your videos, you talk with your son about, daddy's crying. What does that mean? These are happy tears. And you talk about being imperfectly imperfect. You have this great quote in here that I marked. It says, true masculine power is full-blooded power with power that strengthens both our autonomy and our togetherness. Power that is both hard and soft, penetrating and fluid. Finally, focused and panoramic, power that aligns head, heart, and guts. Such power, whatever its intensity, does not abuse and protects what needs protecting. It brings out the very best in a man, backing him and taking needed stands without forgetting his heart. True masculine power is not out to prove anything, but simply to support the living of a deeper life, a life of authenticity, care, passion, integrity, love, and wakefulness. And that's a quote from Robert Augustus Master. Yep. But I love this because, power and abuse, they're linked, right? Yeah. Power.
You don't have abuse without power.
Right. And so you're really trying to take us on this journey, which I found here and think really is to think about power in a different way, right? And for men to think of their power, and for women to think about, what does female power look like? What does male power look like? What does protection look like? What does taking a stand look like? So what do you teach your daughter about masculine power, or what will you teach her about masculine power?
Well, the first thing I'll teach her is that she never has to conceal her power for the benefit of another man.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to.
Easier said than done.
I can imagine. And it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I want to make sure that I'm a man telling her that. And I can only imagine the situations you've been in your life, because you are one badass, powerful woman. And how small you've made the men in your life feel, Maria.
Not on purpose.
No. It's never on purpose. That's the man. That's us. That's us men not feeling enough and feeling triggered and insecure by a woman's demonstration of power, because we're told from a young age that that being a girl or a woman or gay or insert homophobic slur there is synonymous with being weak. So when we experience the feminine power, we don't have to do with it. That's why we make up these words like emasculating. What the hell does that even mean? You can't be emasculated. We're masculine. True masculinity is having a balance of the feminine and the masculine. Therefore, if a woman is in her power, then it should actually light me up into mine. That's true power. So that's one of the things I'm going to teach my daughter, is that she doesn't have to dim her light for the benefit of other men. Just like I'm going to be teaching my son, his job is not to protect his sister. He's not a protector of his sister. His job is to make sure his sister doesn't need protecting. His job is to stand up in front of the boys and make sure the boys don't say mean things about his sister. His job isn't to protect his sister. She can take care of herself. Yeah. That's how I want to raise my daughter. So, and I really hope, and I hope to see a world when those kids are grown up, where we don't even have this emasculating thing, where women don't have to dim their light for the sake of men's fragile egos. But that happens far too often. And it's something that I had learned that I even do unconsciously in my own marriage. It's something that we're uncovering and we're working on, because I can just take up space and not even realize I'm taking up space, because the world has told me over and over again that I should. Yeah. Whereas the world has told my wife over and over again that she should make space. So we have to confront those things, and I have to be like, oh shit, I did it again. I'm so sorry.
I love that, because I think, so many women have confronted that, what you just said. They've been told that they make a man feel small, that they make a man feel powerless, that they emasculate a man, that they should be quiet, that they should, step aside. And I think that, and then to be told later, well, actually, you can't do that. That's the man making himself feel small, right? And so what do women do, right? If they love a man and they have power and they want to be in their power and their light, and it's threatening the very person that they love in such a deep, deep way.
It's a phenomenal question. I'm not a relationship coach. I've just been married for 9 years now almost.
But you know a lot about
uh,
men.
what I can tell you is that there's just no way I can say it without saying that I just don't believe it's a woman's job to make a man feel better about himself.
Amen.
And I just don't think I think that we put enough pressure on women. I think that we ask women to hold enough of our stuff. I don't think it's right to ask a woman to dim her light or to hold back her power for the sake of our egos. So I don't think that I have an answer to that except for real, truthful, deep, uncomfortable conversations between these men and women. And I think that starts with therapy.
Yeah.
I think it starts with like a woman being willing to say to a man, I've been dimming my light and my power for the sake of your ego. I love you. My power is not taking yours away.
Yeah.
I just don't think that we should be living in a world where that power dynamic even exists, because as we know, look, it's even backed by science. There's been data that shows that men live longer who share the workload with their wives.
Yeah.
And yet we have this fundamental belief from boyhood that our masculinity is tied to whether we're providers.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that we live shorter lives. But the second the income is shared and there's some sort of balance in the providing, we live longer lives. Well, why is that? Mm-hmm. And I just feel like we have to just go back to like, where did we learn all this shit? Where does this even come from? Right? Yeah. We always, like, I talk about idioms sometimes, like who came up with that idea? Like,
yeah,
that's what masculinity is. It's all learned behavior that we have to unlearn. And if we could just, if men could recognize their worthiness, their nobility, their enoughness, and stand in that power and know that the liberation, as my dear friend Liz Plank says, for the love of men, the liberation of my wife is tied to my own, then I would want her to be set free so that I can be set free.
That's so beautiful. I mean, Justin and I could talk forever about here, but I think what's so beautiful, this came, I know also from you stepping forward and doing a TED Talk at TED Women.
Oh God, talk about fear.
Yeah, you talked a lot about not wanting to do that, the shame, or like, what do I have to say? I think that's that kind of universal thing, like, well, who am I to kind of say anything? And you saying right then, like, I'm not a relationship coach, but you have really dug deep into belief systems, stories that get handed down and passed down, and really question, well, like, why do I think that? And why should I continue to think that? So often we don't do that. We just take what our parents said, the family belief system, the gender belief system. Did you learn a lot just in going through this, when I was doing some of my work in this, how different the mask of masculinity was in the African American community, in the Latina community, the Asian community, the white, you write from a place of acknowledging white privilege, but did you feel that the mask was even tighter in some of those other communities?
Oh yeah, it's different everywhere culturally, in different ethnic populations, and even socioeconomic, geographic, neighborhoods, it can differ. I chose to write the book from my perspective because that's how I felt I could make the most impact.
For sure.
Also, it's the thing that I know. I didn't want this to be a research book because I don't think it hits the same. I wanted to just rip my shit off and give it to another man.
But it's not a memoir.
It's not a memoir. I'm 37. How can I write a memoir? I just feel like I'm just getting started in my life. But I consider it a meditation on masculinity. But what I have absolutely noticed I've absolutely noticed that there is a big difference. But what I can say, I got the best message from a friend of mine. I quote him in the book, Javon Martin. He's a trans man. And he he DM'd me the other day. I sent him the book early, and he said he was crying all morning. He's just turned 50. He said it was the first time in his whole life, at 50 years old, that he's read a book where he felt like he could see himself. And that told me something. And that actually helped release a lot of the stuff that I was feeling. Here is a Black trans man.
Wow.
Who somehow, through the eyes of a white cisgendered straight man, he's able to see some of his own story, which tells me that despite all of our differences, the way the patriarchy works is that it doesn't discriminate its suffering among us men. We're all suffering. And I think that if we can see one man's story, we can see all men's stories. And I hope in some ways that's what this book does. And yes, it's going to be different, but it's also similar.
Wow. That just made me tear up. I have a little family chat, and I sent to my sons, my daughters, and my son-in-law today. I said, I'm talking to this, and I've sent them your videos before. But I said, I want everybody to tune in because we're going to talk about everything he says at Sunday dinner. And we're going to talk about your meditations on masculinity. And I'm going to let the men at the table lead the conversation about did they see themselves in this discussion, because they're different ages. As I said, I have a 23-year-old son, a 27-year-old son, a 40-something-year-old son-in-law. And I have 4 brothers. And as I said, grew up in a very masculine environment, went to work in a very masculine profession, was with a man who was very masculine for a really long time. And so there's a lot of masculine power that women have been dealing with and trying to figure out what's the right entry point. And I think this book, I'm not sure if this is the book to hand to a guy, to maybe just send him this video, just suggest maybe he get it. I've often found
invite him to maybe read it together. Maybe it's a journey that you guys take together. But yeah, I don't think my brothers would want to read this with me, but I'm gonna send it to them nonetheless. But I'm kind of like, I'm gonna tell you, I think you might want to read this book. So I'm gonna send it to my brothers with love and say, I don't need to say anything, you just might read it, because I found it so exciting. I'm so excited that I'm alive to be listening to this conversation, to be reading about it, to be a part of it. It's such a different conversation than I grew up with, that I heard as a young woman. And so I'm really excited about that. And I think you're pushing it forward. And it's just, it's really exciting for me also as a mom of 2 girls, that men are having this conversation, that they're not afraid. I mean, I know many are, but here's a path. I know you say in the book it's not a specific path, but it's a way to start a conversation. You made me tear up, and I can't imagine a greater compliment. And I'm only able to push it forward because of the work that you've done to push it here. So
well, I could go on and on. I'd love to have you. We can keep talking.
Let's
but I know
do it.
You're in the middle of a whole book tour. I want to remind people the book is Man Enough, Undefining My Masculinity by Justin Baldoni. He has a lot of praise on the back. Glennon Doyle, Shawn Mendes, Jay Shetty, Kamara Brown, and there's a lot of great stuff in it. So, and I'm
gonna have to get a quote from you for the next printing, if that's okay.
Yeah, get a quote from me. That's right. Gosh.
I look, if someone would have told me a couple years ago that I was going to write a book and get to talk to you about it, and you would have read it, that would have been enough to get me to write the whole damn thing. So the fact you're going to talk about it at Sunday
I'm old
dinner,
enough to be your mother. Anyway, I'm thrilled. I'm very proud of you. Keep pushing this conversation. Keep learning. And keep bringing us along on the path with you, and keep up the great work. I'll keep watching your Instagrams.
And will you let me know how Sunday dinner goes, please?
I'll let you know.
I'm happy to make a surprise appearance anytime to the to your Sunday dinner.
I would love that. My son-in-law said, I know him. People like say like, oh, I have a friend who has a friend of his and stuff like that. But now you're my friend.
Hey, I want to do it. I want to do it. And will you save this so that I can save it?
Yes, I'm going to save this, and we're going to put this in the Sunday paper this Sunday, so you can watch it all over again.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Justin.
Thank you, Maria. God bless you. Have a good one.
God bless you too.
Bye.
Look at that. Bye. There you go. Well, there it is. Man enough. Take all my little dog things down. He's gone. This is the book. We're going to put it up in the Sunday paper. If you don't get the Sunday paper, I hope you'll sign up for the Sunday paper. It's free and takes you above all the noise, makes sense of the week that was and gets you ready for the week ahead, offers you insight, information, inspiration, and helps you, guides you to what we call the open field. So I loved that conversation. I'm really all about growing and learning more about people of all genders and what they've gone through and how they're making their way and what we can all learn from them so we can have more open, loving, compassionate conversations with one another instead of the angry, opinionated, judgmental conversations so many people are having these days. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'm so glad so many of you said that was incredible, that you learned a lot. I did too. We can always learn. So thank you so much. Have a great, great day. Bye-bye. I can't turn it off. Okay, I'm going to try to turn it off over here. There you go, Maria. Off you go. No, there you go.